There is a quiet exhaustion that comes from trying to change your life over and over again and watching yourself fall back into the same patterns. You read the right books. You watch the right videos. You promise yourself that this time will be different, and for a moment it feels like it is. Then pressure returns, old habits wake up, and that familiar weight settles back onto your chest. Stoicism begins exactly here. Not in inspiration, not in motivation, but in honesty. Two people can experience the same loss, the same failure, the same disappointment. One collapses under it. They blame the world, the timing, the people around them. The other sharpens. They grow quieter, more deliberate, more disciplined. The event did not decide their fate. Their interpretation did. The Stoics understood something the modern world has forgotten. Life does not break you, your reactions do. This is why Stoicism matters now more than ever. The modern world is loud. It rewards impulsive emotion. It trains people to react instantly, to broadcast every feeling, to confuse expression with strength. Stoicism does the opposite. It asks you to pause, to observe, to choose. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the mind has authority over itself, not over events, not over people, not over outcomes, over itself. That is where freedom begins. If you want to rebuild your life, you do not start with your job, your relationships, or your bank account. You start with your mind, because the mind determines how you meet every one of those things. The first Stoic rule is uncomfortable because it removes your favorite escape. Stop negotiating with your weakness. Most people fail not because they lack discipline, but because they keep bargaining with the part of themselves that wants comfort. They treat weakness as if it deserves a voice, as if it deserves a vote. Just one more hour, I'll start tomorrow, just this once, just this weekend. Each of these sounds harmless. None of them are. Marcus Aurelius wrote that life is built action by action, moment by moment. What you repeat becomes who you are. Not your intentions, not your self-image, your repetitions. Weakness does not overpower you in one dramatic moment. It wins through small compromises, quiet delays, tiny betrayals of your future that feel reasonable in the moment. The Stoics did not eliminate weakness by force. They starved it. They understood that strength is not a personality trait. It is a habit. Every time you negotiate, weakness grows more confident. Every time you hold the line, strength grows quieter and steadier. There is a moment every day where your future is decided, when the alarm rings, when discomfort appears, when temptation whispers. That moment is not philosophical, it is practical. You either act or you delay, you either rise or you retreat. Stoicism does not ask how you feel about the moment. It asks what the moment requires. This is not about cruelty toward yourself. It is about clarity. You cannot build a strong life while feeding the part of you that wants it easy. The Stoics trained for hardship deliberately, not because they admired suffering, but because they respected freedom. Every temptation resisted proved they were not owned by impulse. Every discomfort endured reminded them they could govern themselves. Weakness does not need to be defeated once. It needs to be denied daily. You do not change your life by dramatic declarations. You change it by refusing small compromises. And that leads to the second rule, because even disciplined people lose control when they surrender their reactions. Control your reactions, or they will control you. Epictetus stated it simply. It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Two people hear the same insult. One forgets it before the day ends. The other carries it like a wound for weeks. The words were the same. The meaning was not. Most people live at the mercy of emotional reflex. A comment ruins their mood. A delay creates panic. A setback becomes a story of personal failure. Stoicism interrupts this pattern by inserting space between stimulus and response. That space is where power lives. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that outside events are not asking for his opinion. They are simply happening. Meaning is added later by the mind. When you react instantly, you surrender authority. When you pause, you reclaim it. Stoicism does not suppress emotion, it leads it. The practice is simple but not easy. When emotion rises, you slow down, you observe. You ask what is actually happening, not what your fear is narrating. Facts are neutral, stories are emotional, most suffering is created in the story. A meeting went poorly is a fact. I am incompetent is a story. Someone did not respond is a fact. I am being rejected is a story. The Stoic learns to separate the two. Peace is not avoiding difficulty. Peace is refusing to amplify it with unnecessary interpretation. Your response is always your responsibility, even when the situation is unfair. Especially then. Each time you respond instead of react, you strengthen something inside you. A quiet center. a steadiness that does not depend on circumstances. And that steadiness prepares you for the third rule, because control means nothing if you refuse to act when action feels uncomfortable. Do the hard things, especially when you do not feel ready. Epictetus warned that improvement requires the willingness to look awkward, unprepared, even foolish at first. Growth demands humility. Most people already know what would improve their lives. They just postpone it because it feels uncomfortable. They wait for motivation. They wait for confidence. They wait for certainty. The Stoics waited for none of these. They expected resistance. They assumed discomfort. They trained their minds to move anyway. Motivation is a feeling. Discipline is a decision. Seneca observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of the difficulty exists before action begins. The body resists effort. The mind exaggerates consequences, and many people quit before discovering they were capable all along. Every time you choose the hard action despite discomfort, you build proof. Proof that feelings do not command you. Proof that fear is not authority. You do not need perfect conditions to act with integrity. You need commitment. The Stoics respected effort more than comfort, not because comfort was evil, but because comfort unchecked leads to decay. The discomfort you avoid today becomes the regret you carry tomorrow. This is where part 1 ends. We have covered the foundation, not inspiration, not emotion, discipline of choice, reaction, and action. Once you learn to act without negotiating with weakness, to pause instead of react, and to move even when discomfort is present, a new problem appears. Your energy starts leaking. Not from effort, but from noise. This is where most disciplined people quietly lose momentum. They work hard, but their minds are scattered. They are pulled in every direction. They feel busy, but not effective. Productive, but not grounded. Stoicism addresses this directly. Rule 4 is simple and ruthless. Cut the noise. Master your focus. Seneca warned that if you scatter your attention, you scatter your life. The modern world has turned this into a permanent condition. Notifications, opinions, headlines, arguments, endless stimulation. Attention is fragmented before the day even begins. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the mind should concentrate fully on what is in front of it with seriousness and purpose. Not partially, not distracted. Fully, focus is not intensity, it is exclusivity. Where your attention goes, your life follows. If your attention lives in distraction, your life becomes shallow. If your attention lives in discipline, your life becomes strong. Most people do not lose their future through failure. They lose it through distraction. 1 hour stolen here. 1 evening dissolved there. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just erosion. The Stoic understands that attention is a moral choice. You decide what deserves access to your mind. This is not about rejecting technology. It is about refusing mental chaos. A focused mind creates calm strength. A scattered mind creates anxiety, even when nothing is wrong. Silence begins to matter here. Not just external silence, but internal quiet, which leads to Rule 5. Stop seeking approval. Marcus Aurelius observed something uncomfortable. We value our own judgment least and the opinions of strangers most. This is the root of exhaustion for many people, living as a performance, adjusting behavior to be liked, explaining choices, shrinking truth to maintain acceptance. Stoicism dismantles this need completely. A Stoic lives by values, not applause. Approval is unstable. It shifts with mood, trend, and convenience. If you build your life on it, you build on sand. The more you grow, the more resistance you will feel. Often not from enemies, but from familiar people. Growth disrupts comfort. Discipline exposes excuses. Boundaries unsettle those who benefited from your compliance. Epictetus warned that improvement requires accepting misunderstanding. Not everyone will approve. That is not a flaw. That is evidence of independence. The moment you stop needing permission, your actions sharpen. You stop explaining. You stop performing. You start building. Confidence does not come from being seen. It comes from keeping promises to yourself when nobody is watching. And once approval loses its grip, something else naturally follows. Rule 6. Silence is power. Epictetus advised speaking only when necessary and then briefly. Not because speech is dangerous, but because excess speech leaks energy. Most people talk to manage anxiety. They explain to soothe insecurity. They argue to defend identity. None of this builds strength. Silence does. Silence creates space to observe, to learn, to respond instead of react. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you always have the option of having no opinion. This is not passivity. This is restraint. Not everything deserves your response. Not every misunderstanding requires correction. Not every thought needs expression. The quieter you become, the harder you are to manipulate. Silence protects your plans. It preserves your focus. It keeps you out of battles that do not matter. A Stoic does not rush to be understood. They focus on being effective. Results speak more clearly than explanations ever will. At this stage, something important shifts. You are no longer arguing with the world. You are no longer seeking validation. You are conserving energy. That energy is needed for the next rule. Rule 7. Own your mistakes without shame or excuses. Seneca wrote that a person cannot be refined without friction. Mistakes are not the enemy. Avoidance is. Most people either collapse under mistakes or rewrite them to avoid discomfort. They blame circumstances. They blame people. They blame timing. Stoicism refuses both extremes. It demands ownership without self-hatred. There is a difference between shame and responsibility. Shame says, I am broken. Responsibility says, I chose poorly and I can choose differently. Only one of those leads to growth. A Stoic looks directly at failure, not to punish themselves, to learn, to correct. To move forward with clarity. Ownership restores control. Excuses surrender it. When you stop lying to yourself, something stabilizes inside you. You no longer need to protect a false image. You can adjust reality. Strength is not pretending you never fail. Strength is refusing to let failure define your identity. And this leads to the final stretch of the transformation because ownership and silence prepare you for a deeper challenge. Discomfort. By this point, something important has changed. You are no longer reacting to everything. You are no longer negotiating with weakness. You are quieter, more deliberate, more aware. Now Stoicism takes away one last escape. Rule 8. Discomfort is your teacher. Stop running. Epictetus said something that sounds harsh until you understand it. Do not demand that events happen as you wish. Wish instead that they happen as they do and you will live peacefully. This is not surrender. This is strength. Discomfort is not a sign that something is wrong. Discomfort is the signal that something is working. Most people treat discomfort like danger. The moment it appears, they escape. They scroll, they eat, they distract. They seek validation. They quit early. The Stoics did the opposite. They leaned in. They understood that discomfort reveals where growth is happening. It exposes weakness, yes, but only so it can be corrected. You cannot build physical strength without resistance. You cannot build emotional strength without tension. You cannot build mental clarity without sitting with uncertainty. Seneca warned that imaginary suffering causes more pain than reality itself. Most discomfort is not fatal, it is unfamiliar, and unfamiliarity feels threatening to an undisciplined mind. A Stoic learns to sit with discomfort without dramatizing it. Loneliness is not an emergency, boredom is not a failure. Delay is not rejection, effort is not punishment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that if something is endurable, then endure it without complaint. Complaining does not remove pain, it multiplies it. Endurance builds something rare, inner confidence. Not the loud kind, the quiet certainty that you can handle what comes. This is where people begin to change for real, when they stop running from discomfort and start learning from it. And once you stop running, you need something that carries you forward consistently. Rule 9. Discipline is greater than motivation. Epictetus said that no person is free who is not master of themselves. Freedom is not doing what you feel like. That is impulse. Freedom is doing what must be done regardless of mood. Motivation is emotional weather, it comes and goes. Discipline is climate, it stays. Most people build their lives on motivation and wonder why everything collapses. The Stoics built routines. Simple, repetitive, unexciting. Marcus Aurelius was not motivated every day. He was responsible every day. Discipline removes the need for constant decision-making. You act because this is who you are, not because you feel inspired. This is where many people fail quietly. Their standards are too dramatic. They aim for perfection, miss it once, and abandon everything. Stoicism does not require perfection. It requires consistency. A minimum standard keeps identity intact even on bad days. You show up small if you cannot show up strong. But you show up. Character is built in ordinary moments, when no one is watching, when nothing feels exciting, when quitting would be easy. That is where self-respect is formed. And finally, we reach the last rule, the one that decides whether everything before it becomes philosophy or reality. Rule 10. Stop living in your head, live in alignment. Marcus Aurelius gave a command that ends all debate. Stop arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. Most people live split lives. One version exists in their thoughts, full of values and ideals. The other exists in reality, full of contradiction. They admire discipline but avoid effort. They value honesty but avoid hard conversations. They want peace but feed drama. Stoicism collapses this split. What you do matters more than what you think. What you practice matters more than what you know. What you repeat matters more than what you admire. Alignment creates peace. When actions match values, there is no internal friction, no self-betrayal, no quiet shame. This is not about being perfect. It is about being honest. When tempted, the Stoic asks one question: what would the strongest version of me do right now? Then they do that, even quietly, even imperfectly. This is how weakness loses power, not through hatred, through consistency. Stoicism does not promise an easy life. It promises a stable one, a grounded one, a life where emotions no longer drive the steering wheel. You become emotionally unshakable, not emotionless, disciplined, not rigid, quiet, not passive. The Stoics left a blueprint, not for admiration, but for use. Now the responsibility shifts to you. Choose one rule, apply it today, apply it again tomorrow. That is how the mind is fixed. That is how the life follows. If you are committed, say it quietly to yourself: I will not live at the mercy of my emotions.